Hello, beautiful person, beautiful world. This is the story about my accident. It took place on July 10th, 2022. This was like a really traumatic experience for me, but I want to use this as like an opportunity to share with other people in hopes that it could be like really cathartic for them as well as for me. And also, if anybody's going through a hard time, this is just like a reminder you can get through it and just keep pushing. Things always seem like it's impossible to get through, but I felt bad after hearing this story that it'll inspire you to keep going and just keep fighting on because, I mean, God will carry you through somehow, some way. Things will work out in your favor. You just gotta keep on pushing and stay consistent. Just a brief overview. Me and my cousin were going to a party. It was for one of my best friends. It was her birthday. So I had came back to the city, went to go to the party and everything. It was a great time. But that night I got very drunk. My cousin was driving us home. We ended up getting into an accident. It was like a head-on collision, but my side of the car took the majority of the impact. So it left me in like a medically induced coma for 6 days. And after I woke up, I was just very confused. I wasn't really sure what was going on. I remember they said I was fighting the medical staff for like a few days, so they had to continue like to sedate me to keep me calm. They had me on like a lot of drugs at the time, and I didn't really understand what was going on. I was really confused, and I felt like everybody at the time was plotting on me. I felt like something was wrong. I was really paranoid. Waking up in like that state really caused me to be more confused and just I was I didn't know what was going on. I was just scared and I felt very alone. So the night of the party, it was after like my first year of grad school. It was like another regular 24-year-old night, and it turned into a nightmare. Now, honestly, majority of the night is kind of a blur. I guess almost dying will do that to you, but what I do remember was I had a really great time. Now, ironically, my mom and my sister both tried to convince me not to go. That might have been like God or like an angel trying to be like, hey, something's gonna happen. But I do feel like everything happens for a reason, and not that I'm grateful for the accident. I mean, I'm grateful that I was able to get through that experience. So just being able to put that in perspective was something that took me a long time like to process and like think through. And it took a lot of therapy and just spending time with God and using that time to reflect. But overall, I do feel like I'm a much stronger person now than I would be if I hadn't gone through that experience. Now, the first few days when I was in the ICU were really kind of a blur. Like, I wasn't really able to have anybody come and visit me because Atlanta was like going through like a COVID outbreak at the time. So they were only like allowing 2 or 3 people into the room at a time. So my family was coming back in shifts because I had 5 people in my family, and they weren't really letting anybody else back there to come see me because they were worried about like me being at risk of like getting an infection or getting sick while I was already in like a really terrible state. After I was coming down from a lot of the drugs, they started giving my entire breakdown of all of my injuries. So my left arm was broken, my spine was fractured, both of my legs were broken, and I had a traumatic brain injury, fluid in my lungs, my sternum was fractured, a lot of the bones in my face were broken. There were just a lot of different factors to take into account. They were just trying to be very cautious, and they didn't want me getting sick because people were like reckless and not doing what they needed to do at the time. Since I was on all of the drugs from being in the ICU and they were trying to keep me calm and sedated, I would start going through ICU delirium. And at first I thought I was going crazy because I was thinking that the medical staff was plotting on me. They were trying to tell me to do things, and I was like, I'm not doing that because y'all are lying to me. And I really only felt safe when my family would come and visit me. So other than those times, I was like, something bad is gonna happen. Somebody's plotting on me. I would hear people in the bathroom, and I would tell the medical staff like, somebody's in the bathroom. They're like, no, there's not. But little did I know that my room was connected to another room. So there was somebody else in the bathroom, but it was just like another person using the bathroom. My days started blurring together because I was in like a room with no windows or anything. My family was only able to visit during visiting hours, so outside of those times, it kind of felt like anything could happen. And I was like, if they're plotting on me, they're gonna do it while my family's not here. So I had to like really block out those thoughts, and it was hard because of all of the drugs I was currently on at the time because ICU, and After a while, they told me like after I got out of the ICU, they told me like it was a normal thing that happens to people. It's called ICU delirium, and it usually happens because you're like in an enclosed space and you're on a lot of drugs. So a lot of times, like, the time runs together on you. You start getting paranoid. You're afraid. You don't really know what's going on. And so, like, that already added to my already current state of confusion. In between my surgeries, they had me doing, like, little physical therapy exercises just to keep my body active. I know this from watching Grey's Anatomy. They call it early ambulation. And so, like, whenever you go through a surgery, if you get up earlier and, like, you're starting to be active, I don't know all the science behind it, but it allows your body to recover faster. So they had me like getting up, doing my physical therapy, little exercises in between surgeries. The only surgery I was mostly aware for were like them trying to get the fluid out of my lungs, which I'll talk about later, and then my spinal fusion, because like that was toward the end of all of my other surgeries. So when I was in a more coherent state, they started like breaking down like what had changed. So they were like, you have rods in your legs now. I had screws in my spine. I was kind of aware for that surgery. Not really aware, but like that was like one of the last surgeries I was having, so I was more coherent during that time. They wanted to put a rod in my foot because my left foot was shattered, but they figured that I was young, so it wasn't really going to be anything that was like a main priority at the time. So they just kind of allowed my body to heal it on its own. And then my left arm was fractured, and they actually didn't realize it was broken or fractured until I don't know when, but it was like during the time that I was in my medically induced coma. So, but it was like a few days, and that might be why I have nerve damage in my left hand now, but it is what it is. I'm just going to continue to keep moving forward. But yeah, it was overall a very traumatic experience just because I was already scared. So much of my body had already changed during that time. It was like I already knew these injuries were going to be something that stuck with me for life, and they were going to be like short things I could just easily get through. These were going to be things that affected me forever. And even after I got out of the ICU, it allowed me to see like I still have other injuries and like different rehabilitations that were going to like cause me to just experience the world differently. Like I have double vision, so that was something I didn't realize until later on. I didn't realize the extent of my nerve damage on my hand until way after the fact. It was really just a lot of processing and kind of understanding where I was at the time. Right before my birthday, I think it was July 29th or 28th, they moved me to another hospital that was closer, so my family it was easier for them to get to me, and they had the intensive rehab unit, so I was able to do like rehab multiple sessions throughout the day in order to help my body get to like a more occupational state. But that was an experience on its own just because I was tired of being in the ICU, so I was ready to get out and go on and move to something else and like have actual windows in my room. So when they actually did move me to another hospital, I was really excited, and then it was also easier for my family to come visit. I already knew that them driving an hour every day back and forth was taking a toll on them, so which is something I shouldn't have really been too worried about because at the time I really used to focus on me, but I'm just the kind of person like I always care about the people who care about me, the people who are important in my life. So now we're going to transition into talking about my time at the intensive rehab unit and just how I moved through that and how I really had to lock in during that time period. I felt like it was like basically my training arc. If you watch anime, if you're into like things like that, I felt like it was my training guard. That's like when I got the strongest, and I had really like learned all the skills I needed to in order to propel myself into the chapter I wanted to advance into.